إلهي قد أتيت إلى رحابك مستجيرا.
So who was to summarize for the brothers and sisters? Who?
This guy.
Yeah, ready? No, we all do it. Everyone will do it. Some of us will do it. Stand up, talk to everybody. So you have to come here.
So we talked about the deconstruction phase. Okay, when at the beginning we were asked to provide a lot of questions that we felt a little uncomfortable. Okay, about Islam, and we listed around 16 questions. We talked about these questions, and Mr. Hamza asked us, like, wouldn't it be great if he would be able to answer all of these? And we found out that he can't. We have to do that. That's what's called the deconstruction phase. Now, after that phase, we talked about the GORA and the question about the triangle with initiation, the concept of Islam, with the agreements, and with
Okay, you're giving people a lot of words, bro.
Okay.
You're not telling them actually what we did with the agreement and initiation.
Yeah, I'll go to those.
Oh, you're going to do that? Okay.
First of all, I'll name the outlines.
Oh, you're confusing them first and clarifying. That's true.
Yeah, but I forgot the third one. The agreement, the concept, and the akhlaq, adab. Okay, so what are those means? Okay, before we start going into the GORA and what they mean, first we have to understand this triangle. So what we have in this triangle, first we're trying to get any question or any. Let me go back one step here. All these questions here does not mean that, because to answer all these, you mean you are alim, you have to know like multiple things, which is not, this is not what's actually dawah. Dawah is to take that guy and take him back to the core of Islam. Okay? Now, to do that, we go back to the idea of the concept. So whenever you get asked any question, try not to answer that question directly first, but try to ask that guy to go back to the concept of Islam. And to do that, you have to so Sabil Rabbik is the concept, okay, of Islam. What's Islam about? And to do that, you agree with him or try to facilitate a medium of communication by saying, okay, if he asks you a question about anything, why women wear hijab, why do we cut the hand of a thief, you say, okay, these are all valid questions. However, to answer this question, I have to take you back to the concept.
So what we said was, we did a debrief and saying, you guys are rubbish. Yeah? And that's how we start. We start with rubbish and then we clean it up and then we become better. And because no one was calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it was a mess. So we did a debrief, and the way we debriefed was with the analogy of the lenses. See, in Islam, the reason these answers make sense to us because they come from a basis, which is Tawheed, the oneness of Allah. And that forms the lenses in which we see the entire world. So my lenses could be pink, your lenses will be blue. So when I look at the board, I'm like, look at that pink board. Like, no it's not, it's blue. Yes, it's pink, no it's blue. In order for us to understand one another, we have to take what off? Our lenses off, or exchange lenses, right? And the way to do that with this new approach is to adopt the go-wrap approach. So the go-wrap approach basically means God's existence, oneness, and revelation. So God's existence, oneness, revelation, and prophethood, okay? That was the new approach. So we show them that God is a reality, He is one, He said that in Revelation, and there is a prophet called the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. If this is true, then whatever comes from truth is true. And what we did yesterday is the first part of the process in the conversation to bring people to this truth, essentially Tawheed, or the basis of Islam. And that process is called?
Initiation.
Initiation. Okay? So, initiation is so important because it's the bridge between any question and Go-Rap and Tawheed and the basis of Islam. So what is initiation? So we drew a triangle to make it easy for the engineers in the room. Okay? And here you have empathy, akhlaq, adab, be nice, etc. Then here you have the concept, which we're going to explain, and then you get an agreement. Okay, so I'm going to explain this again. Now what the concept is, okay, in order for you to understand the answer, you have to understand the concept of Islam. And there were two issues that we need to overcome, which is, what if they basically say they want a yes or no answer? What if they want a yes or no answer? Well, basically the way we deal with that is by saying, well, actually, I know you're sincere, and there is no yes or no answer because, if you say yes to, I agree with abortion, does it really represent who you are? How many days in the week, yes or no? So the answer is the concept of Islam. So if you really want an answer, and I know you're sincere to listen to an answer, give me 2 minutes, I can explain the concept to you, right? So that's one way of doing it, okay? Of dealing with people who pressure you into a yes or no answer. What was the other issue?
Crazy question.
If someone gives you a crazy question, yeah? Crazy question. Now if someone says to you, hey, I heard you guys like to kill 5-year-olds, chop their heads off and eat porridge from the skull. Now you're not going to say, that's a very good question. In order for you to understand the answer, you have to understand the concept of Islam. No, you're implying that we do eat porridge from 5-year-old skulls, right? So when it's a crazy question, of course not. What are you talking about? Where do you get that from? But you know what? In order for you to understand anything about Islam, you have to understand its concepts. You still bring it to the Dawah. Use this question for the Dawah. So essentially, this is what we did yesterday. Everyone practiced this. So IERA did a very good job of it now, but the only thing I would improve on your approach is make sure that you tell them the concept is the answer. Don't say, in order for you to get the answer, you have to understand Islam. It's not direct enough. Try and change your language a little bit, right? Now, this initiation is so powerful because you take any question, you can link it to Tawheed. Any question, you can link it to the oneness of Allah. Any question, you can link it to Islam. Any question, you can link it to the Dawah. That's how powerful initiation is. For example, someone says, why do you wear hijab? Well, that's a very good question. Before I wore hijab, I had the same type of question. But in order for you to understand the answer, you have to understand the concept of Islam. Hey, how come you guys grow beards? I know it's really funny, don't you think? Because even goats have beards. Nothing really special. But I think for you to understand why I grow a beard, you have to understand the concept of Islam. Hey, how come you guys can get married 4 times? It's like, well, Sharia law, Islamic law is not that caricatured. There is a nuanced discussion. But the point is, for you to understand the answer about why we can get married 4 times and why we can do this or can do that, you have to understand the concept of Islam. But I want a yes or no answer. Well, I can't give you a yes or no answer. Go to Google. Yes or no doesn't represent my beliefs. Does yes or no represent your love for your mother? Does yes or no represent your views on abortion? Of course not. You want to interact with me? The answer is the concept. That's how Islam works. And I know you want to engage with me. Do you see how powerful this approach is? Any question. And it doesn't have to be a question. You could approach people. you know, sir, I want to discuss the purpose of life with you. And I think in order for you to understand the purpose of life, you have to understand the concept of, how easy is that? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. You could do this to Obama, you could do this to your next door neighbor, you could do this to an 18-year-old, an 80-year-old, you could do everybody. So essentially that's what we did yesterday. Yes, sir.
Did you see the video of the guy? It was like maybe sometime this year. He went to the legislator in Netherlands or something, and he spoke to all of them. He said, "That's my obligation. I need to tell you about Islam." Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
The Queen was there and all the whole government.
Wow.
Which is in fact what,
in the
as
assembly.
Muslims, we're supposed to do that.
In the assembly,
if you
right?
can, talk
But
to
he was
your
taken
government.
away, right?
And then they took him away because you.
So, waiting.
But they all clapped him. There was a
No,
standing ovation
there was-
because freedom of
In the
speech.
beginning, there was like a musical team on the stage, and when he went and started talking, the entire team just went off the stage because they were scared. And he said, "Okay, wait, I don't have anything."
What did he say?
Well, it was in Dutch, but it was translated in English. But he said,
Yeah, he was
I
talking
don't remember
about
the
it.
details.
You go on YouTube, you'll find it.
He said, "I feel it's my obligation. I want to tell you guys all about Islam and believing in God." I can find it for you guys. We can watch it very end.
So that's initiation. So after initiation, now you got the agreement. So you don't forget, akhlaq, adab, be a person of trust, have empathy, use the concept and get the agreement for their time. This doesn't have to be in one conversation. It could be 2, 3, 4 conversations. It could be a year, it could be a month, it could be a week. Who knows? And then we need to go wrap. So the next point that we talk about is essential, which is what I call an amoeba. No, we're joking. You don't do biological sciences. You do common sense. How do you spell common? Is it 2 M's?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, common sense is very simple. The reason we have this in place, because this is before you do Gorah, before you discuss the Tawheed, the basis of Islam. Isn't that right, Mediha?
Yes.
Good. It's like being a teacher in class. Everyone's whispering, but tell them all. So, common sense is basically you get people to understand that our concept of Islam is based on here and here. Yep, brain and heart. And that is, you can summarize it in a term called common sense. For example, say, before I discuss the concept of Islam with you, I just want to get an agreement that the way we approach conclusions in life is that we just use our brains. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, of course. For example, are you going to cross the road blindfolded? Are you going to play soccer blindfolded? No, because we have to use our reason. We have to use our rational faculties and things that make sense. Is that good for you? It's a one-liner. The reason we add it because sometimes when you speak to Christians, at the end they may say, "But I don't feel it," right? And you just want to remind them that don't forget what you agreed to in the beginning. That actually, we only come to conclusions based on our heart and mind, not just the heart. Okay? Does that make sense? And then now we need to go wrap, okay? So now we're in a position to discuss go wrap, okay? And this is what we do. I basically say, well, thank you for spending time to listen to the concept of Islam. And basically, we start with God. In Islam, we believe in God. And we have good reasons to believe in God. Let me give you some of these reasons. For example, it's all well known that the universe began now. And since the universe began, there's only 4 possible explanations that the universe came from nothing. The universe created itself. The universe was created by something else that was created. Or the universe was created by something uncreated. Now, when we use our brains, we use our heart and our mind, our common sense, we know that from nothing, nothing comes. Because nothing plus nothing is nothing. Also, we know it couldn't create itself because that would imply that the universe was in existence and not in existence at the same time. Let me give you an example. Can your mother give birth to herself? No. The third point, that the universe maybe was created by something else that was created. Well, there's a problem here because it doesn't explain anything, because if the universe was created by something created, then that created thing must also be created by something else. And if that's created, then that thing must also be created by something else. If that goes on forever, we will never have the universe in the first place. Imagine I'm a sniper, I'm a Marine, and I want to shoot someone. And before I shoot, I have to ask permission from the Marine behind me. If that goes on forever, am I ever going to shoot? No. Similarly, you can't have an infinite chain of causes, infinite chain of creators that were already created by something else, and that goes on forever. Otherwise, we would never have the universe in the first place. So it makes sense as an uncreated creator. And if there's an uncreated creator, therefore he must have certain attributes. And that's when we discuss oneness. So let's just stick to God's existence first, yeah? So, and that's just one argument for God's existence. You could make your own, the ones that you have that personal to you. You could do one based on the argument of consciousness. How can we be conscious? How can we have a third person subjective experience if God doesn't exist? You could say, what about the design in the universe? If we found a mobile phone on the floor, we wouldn't assume that it just was formed as a result of the oil in the ground and the sand melted into glass. You know, if we saw a mobile phone in a desert, we're not going to assume that it just appeared from these random processes. We know it was shaped and manufactured. Or if you extrapolate that to the whole universe, which is far more designed, far more finely tuned, if you looked at the laws of physics, therefore there must be a cosmic designer. So use the arguments that you love, the ones that are closer to you, okay? So, the structure of what I said was we believe in God and we have good reasons to believe in God. Here are the reasons. Do you agree so far? So let me just talk about some of the, let me just write down through the reasons that we spoke about, which is that the universe began if it began, there are a few logical possibilities, right? Which is came from nothing, created itself, was created by something created, created by something uncreated. Let's do another one for you, right? Let's do the mobile phone one, okay?
Even if it's just a play phone, it doesn't have to be a mobile.
So here you have a desert. I just put desert. 1S or 2?
1S.
Depends on which.
Desert.
It's two, one.
So desert. Okay.
One more S is too sweet.
And then you have mobile phone. Okay. So is that a result of the sand plus oil, yeah, plus chance, or design? Okay? So it's very simple. So you basically say, let me just take you through the journey again, right? Hey Fatima, how you doing? So good to see you, Sarah. Mwah, mwah, mwah. It's been so long. Sorry? Yeah. You know, what happened to your hair? You've been covering your hair. It's so nice and silky. What's wrong? Well, you know, I've become religious. I went to Hajj. You know, we go around the cube and we worship God. And you know, I decided to fulfill my obligations. Oh, okay. So, why do you do that? Well, I think in order for you to understand the answer, you have to understand the concept of Islam. Do you have some time, Sarah? Let's have a coffee. Yeah, of course. Well, you know, basically we approach the whole concept of Islam with common sense. It makes sense in our heart and our mind. For example, Sarah, are you going to put makeup on blindfolded? No. I mean, only an idiot would do that, right? You'd have mascara on your chin and foundation on your hair and what else do you guys put on? What do you put on, bro? On Saturdays, what do you put on? Yeah? So you can't basically put makeup on blindfolded. So the beginning of the concept of Islam is that we believe in God. Now I know you're Christian, you already believe in God, but let me explain that why we have good reasons to believe in God. Well, you know, the universe began, that's well known now based on physics and mathematics. And if that's the case, then there's only 4 logical possibilities. That the universe came from nothing, it created itself, it was created by something else created, or created by something uncreated. You know nothing can't come from nothing, right? You know in your makeup bag, if there's nothing in there and I pretend to take something out, what am I going to get? Nothing, because from nothing, nothing comes. Could it create itself? Could your makeup bag create itself? Of course not. Someone made it. It's from Gucci. Yeah? Or, you know, or was it created by something else that was created? Well, yeah, maybe because it was made by Gucci. Yeah, but then who made Gucci? Someone else. And who made someone else? Someone else. If that goes on forever, would you ever have the makeup bag? Of course not. So that means there must be something uncreated that created everything, right? Yeah. Do you see how simple that is? You could do it to a bimbo. Makeup. Honestly, you could do it to anybody. You could do it to someone likes basketball or someone likes clothes. These scenarios you could apply to anything. Does that make sense?
Sorry. Do we really?
Wait. Any questions?
Do we really have to ask these, tell these things to a person who already knows them?
Yes. If someone already believes in God, do it. Summarize it very quickly. I'll tell you why. It reaffirms the belief in God. Secondly, it shows that you are an authority, a social authority, in terms that you know what you're talking about, so you gain their trust even more. And usually Christians don't really think about this in an intellectual way. They're like, you know, God's in my heart, which is true from the perspective that God is a natural belief. But they are too excessive on the emotions. So you just want to bring them back a bit and show them, look, we have grounding. You don't have to go this detailed, but if they already believe in God, say something, give a 1-liner, 2-liner, something just to summarize. Yeah? And then you get agreement. Does this make sense? Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah.
So we use the last line, this is we agree that it was created with something uncreated. But you know, how do you know it's God or it's
That's the oneness. That's oneness.
Another.
Yeah, we'll do that next stage.
oh, it's one.
Yes.
So, if I be the devil's advocate, I can see a contradiction in these statements, right? So I can, if I say that the universe began, I can, based on this, I can say the universe was always there, right? So the same thing as uncreated. Universe was uncreated, but it was.
No, but the universe began. You can't say that.
But the Big Bang, I mean, science says that.
The reason I don't get into why to show the universe began, one, it's technical, and secondly, it's irrelevant because it's well established the universe began.
And there's proof that the universe is expanding. If it's expanding, the rest of.
That's the astrophysical evidence, but there's different theoretical models anyway.
Thermodynamics.
My view on why the universe began is because of mathematics. You can't have an actualized, physical, real-world infinite. Impossible.
Right, but then isn't that the same thing as the uncreated whoever was uncreated, who created.
No. Why is that the same thing?
Not part of the universe.
Because the uncreated person has a person. They can argue that the uncreated person is also physical, some kind of physical, has a
Outside.
physical presence.
No, but that's not the point. See, the point is we're saying the universe began, right? These are the four logical possibilities. Why does number 4 contradict the first point? There's no contradiction. Okay, if the universe never began, what is it? It's uncreated.
Okay.
Yeah, which is no problem. We're not denying something can't be uncreated. We accept that. It's part of the premises, right?
Oh.
But what we're saying is, if the universe began, then it's impossible it was uncreated. Because it began. Because if something begins, it once wasn't there. If it once wasn't there, then it came into being. It requires some kind of force, power, cause, something.
What about God?
Sorry?
What about God? So he's there.
Okay, so good.
That means
So what about God? Good. So we said it can't come from nothing, can't create itself, can't be created by something else created. So therefore it must be created by something uncreated. If something is uncreated, it means there's no creator for it.
why is it this wrong and this is right and the previous one is wrong?
Right.
If you resorted the questions and made the first one in the beginning and said no and then come back
Okay,
to
so you're saying
why don't you just start from the third, from the first, the second, take the third, the fourth?
forget
and
the
then
order. The point is, are these valid assumptions? Are these valid logical possibilities? Yes. So address them because everyone you meet will have one of these questions. The whole of atheism can be translated into these premises. I'm telling you, everything is in here. By the way, this has a Quranic basis, yeah? Let me give it to you. Chapter 52, verse 35 to 36. All of the logical possibilities are implied in this ayah. Okay, so it's actually a Quranic argument. So, why does this contradict 3? I don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah, you said that to create something you have 0 plus 0 plus 0 doesn't equal 1, right?
Yes.
There is a 1. How is that? So let's consider the universe as astaghfirullah, as the God. Why don't you consider the universe itself as
Because
a God?
it began.
Yeah, and God exists.
Sorry?
The God exists. That means that He began also.
No, why?
Why
Because
is
your
that?
assumption is that everything exists requires a creator. No. The thing we're talking about is everything that begins to exist requires a creator. We're not denying that things can be eternal. We don't have a problem with that. We're entertaining that possibility. We're talking about the universe. Let's explain the universe. If it began, which is true, could it pop into existence from or via nothing? Could it create itself? Paradox. Impossible. Could it be created by something else created? Maybe. But if we continue with that logic, that it was created by something else created, and that created thing was created by something else that was created, and that goes on forever, you will never have the universe in the first place. Let me give you an example. If universe 1 was as a result of universe 2, and universe 2 was as a result of universe 3, and that went on forever, would you ever have universe 1? Exactly, that's the point. So therefore, it necessitates there is something that's uncreated. Let me give you my hand as an example. My left hand wants to move, it wants power. Before it gets power, the right hand has to give it power. Before the right hand gets power, the hand behind it has to give it power. But before this gets power, the hand before it has to get power. If that goes on forever, am I ever going to move my left hand? No. That's why Ibn Taymiyyah said you can't have an infinite regress of causes. Because this cause, for example, can't get its causal power from a previous cause. And if that goes on forever, we'll never have any causal power. It won't be in existence. Like Dr. Jafar Idris said, you were just having non-existence. There will be nothing. So it necessitates there's something uncreated. Meaning, there's something that never began. That brought it into being. And we're not claiming it to be Allah, God, Jesus, Buddha yet. That's when we discuss oneness. Make sense?
Yeah.
Good. Yes, brother.
So what if he says the uncreated creator is the quantum vacuum?
What if he says the uncreated creator is a quantum vacuum?
Yeah, as a possibility.
Then give him a broom. Well, that's it. The quantum vacuum can't be the uncreated creator.
Because it fluctuates.
Not only because it fluctuates, because the quantum vacuum has a beginning.
Yeah, is it like proof scientifically?
Yes and no. Some say yes, some say no.
But then he would say we don't.
No, that's only if you think science is the only evidence you have, but you don't. You have lots of evidence to show the universe began. Not only science, but mathematical.
No, he would say that this universe began. I agree.
Yes.
Maybe another eternal reality existed before the universe.
It's like a God substitute. Because what you're going to find out is, say fine, agree with him, do you agree there's an uncreated creator then? Or do you think something is eternal that brought this universe into being? He will say yes. Because if it's the quantum vacuum, then it's the quantum vacuum. When we go to oneness, we'll realize it can't be the quantum vacuum, it must be the creator Allah, because we go and we discuss certain attributes that have to be true. So we're going to do that in a bit, okay?
So just one more question.
Yeah.
If he says like there is atemporal causality, if he says that there is the singularity, and there exists the law of physics that describes its nature, okay? They eternally exist, they eternally coexist, okay? And then this law of physics makes this singularity change and create the image, okay?
So the law of physics is eternal.
Yes.
That's what he's saying.
Yes.
But that's not true. Law of physics break down at the beginning of the universe anyways.
No, it's saying another law of physics.
Another one, a made up one.
Yeah.
Well, you just say to him this, you're making things up to create a new argument. For example, you can say, what if, for example, my mother's not my mother, she's a rhino, she's pink, with stripes, she was born on Pluto, and she flew here on a feather. What if?
From Mars.
See, the what if, although he sounds technical and intellectual, it's a what if. Well, and what if is counter discourse, you can't have a conversation. Well, say to him, what if I think you're an alien, and you have 5 arms and they're hidden in your spine, and I'm going to rip you open and find out now. Yeah? Hey, what if? Because he's just making things up. You could postulate anything. What if there was a law that's not really a law, but it's a law? What if there's a new law of the universe that we haven't found yet, but it's going to come? It's just hypothetical reasoning. The point is, let's weigh our evidence based upon the facts that we have at hand, the basic fundamental things. And these logical possibilities are universal in any country, in any spatio-temporal boundary, in any parallel universe. These are true and binding. What he's saying is he's making things up. He could say, you could even postulate, what if God is lying? What if we're in the Matrix, bro? What if your brain is in Mars and there's aliens with probes in it that making you think this? What if I'm not real, bro? You can't even prove that I'm real. Prove it. No, it's an axiomatic thing. Science can't prove the real world is the real world. They have to believe it so they could build their own theories. Prove this is real. It's in your head, man.
But in this case, he would say, what the postulate that my postulate and your postulate, which is Allah, okay? What makes the other?
But that's the point. This is the point we need to do, because you're getting very kalami now. Yeah.
Yes.
You have to realize, arguments do not bring hidayah. You have to realize, arguments don't bring guidance. These arguments are there just to wake up the fitrah. Because we believe, they already believe anyway. It's already inside them, it's part of their nature. So we're just removing the dust. They've been socialized to believe in something else, where their nature is to believe in Allah. Because at the end of the day, you get into so much nitty-gritty academia, you'll be lost. Just say to them, okay, I've given you, I think my view is more reasonable. That's all you have to say. And it is far more reasonable than this wacko, crazy matrix stuff, right? And that's all you need to do. That's what Dawah is about. Just bring it back slowly to common sense, back to the basis. And say, that's fine, that may be true, but what is more reasonable to you? And you just plant seeds in people. Remember, these arguments don't have intrinsic value. They're there to wake up the soul. And they're strong. I do believe they're strong, but you don't want dawah to end up to be an academic exercise. You want it to be that you give them ayat, you give them signs, you give them evidences that are coherent like this to wake them up. Does that make sense? Trust me, bro.
But some people are not.
But that's not your problem. So you think you have to join their way of thinking and think everything has to be academically specified? No. To be at that level of thinking, bro, is not intellectual. It's a psychosis. It's called the God substitute. I want to substitute something for God all the time. Whether I call it the infinite, whether I call it an infinite eternal law, whether I call it Mother Nature, whether I call it this kind of conscious property in the universe, whether I call it this or that. These are God substitutes. Whether I call it the multiverse theory, that's a God substitute. So you have to understand that a lot of these things are just basically emotional, couched in intellectual language. And that's why I just say to them, okay, maybe it's plausible, but I think mine is far more reasonable and natural based on the evidence that I have at hand. And it doesn't deny your argument, that's the thing.
But I think we need to look more evidence.
No.
Then how, I mean, he would say, these are the possible postulates. What makes one more likely than the other? What makes one more reasonable than the other?
But it is more reasonable.
More,
Because he has to make up stuff that doesn't exist. That's the point.
He would say, what makes you your God?
No, this is the point. These things are universal, right? These can't be denied in any planet, if you're on the moon, if you're on the star, if you're in the sun. They're like necessary truths in a way. He's bringing along something, a postulate, another argument, or another possibility, okay, that is not grounded in one necessary truths, and is not grounded in any empirical verification. He's making it up. That's the point. So if you're going to weigh your evidence, then you're going to weigh your evidence like that's more grounded, and that's not more grounded. Just because he says, yes, well there may be an infinite singularity and an infinite law, and they both coexist co-eternally, and you have to assume atemporal causality, that makes sense. And you're like, well, yeah, maybe, but I'm far more reasonable. Because you're making stuff up. What's your evidence for that? Well, maybe, but this you're not making up. These are known truths. You see, that's why when you speak to people like this, have a foundational approach. Always bring to the foundational truths that people can't really deny. Because what he's doing is adding something to the mix that has no empirical grounding and doesn't have any necessary grounding in logic. So that's why you're more grounded.
Yeah, but he will say your God doesn't have any necessary foundation.
No, it does, because it's as a result of other foundational truths.
He will say, due to this foundational truth, I have my possibility.
No, but that's not true.
He will say my uncreated creator is not the person. It just...
Yeah, but that's the next stage.
Then you pull out the knife and you cut his
The question is that what if he's not ready to believe whatever you're saying?
Yeah,
And
just
he will
keep
keep
on.
on
Agree to disagree. Hello?
We should stop.
Excuse me? Agree to disagree. Agree to disagree. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Trust me, you'll be there all day. And wallahi, at the end, you realize it was just an emotional thing that he got caught up in.
I know it's not.
Yeah, exactly. So if you know it's emotional, why are you giving him the wrong medicine? It's your fault. You're the problem, not him.
So
Do you understand? Remember,
what
you
should
give
I do?
people what they need, not what they want. There's a big difference. For example, I used to speak a lot to apostates who left the religion. I hardly talk about intellectual stuff. I talk about their parents. Like, what are you talking about parents for? Because I know that's your problem. Or I talk about their arrogance. I say, wallahi, my brother, you're arrogant. I see it myself and I've seen you, you're the most arrogant idiot in the world. You know why? Because I just squeezed you into a corner. I deliberately made you use 3 contradictory arguments against me. So which one do you believe in? It shows that just using arguments for the sake of arguments, you just want to win, you're arrogant. And you'll be like, you cry, you get offended. It's psychology. Most of it's psychology, bro. So don't give people what they want, give them what they need.
What do they need?
Oneness.
They need a bloody slap. Yeah? Now what they need is they need something that's very coherent, which is coherent, okay? And agree to disagree and move on with your position about the concept of Islam. And then they plant the seed. Khalas. Khalas, just plant the seed, bro. Okay? There's beauty in simplicity. Because this can't be denied. He could have all the postulates in the world, you still have a coherent argument. And say to him, yeah, maybe your approach is as strong as my conclusion. Fine, let's agree to disagree. Be humble. And he will think, oh, the God hypothesis is as strong as my hypothesis. It will get him thinking. Okay, so, any other questions? Yes? No? Any other questions?
I
Yes.
just wanted to add something to
Of course.
regardless of what the person's argument is, when you attack or when you tell someone and you keep answering him or like showing that what he has is wrong, he will keep being defensive, and you go on to loop and you will never finish.
Yes.
This is the first point. Second point, worst comes to worst, tell him, this is what I believe in, I believe my opinion makes sense. Tell him that this is how Islam is, this is how we are. What is your alternative? You're telling me to not believe in God, to
No, I wouldn't do that. I tell you why I wouldn't do that, because you want to have a structured approach. You're bringing them to talk about the whole of Tawheed. So what I would say is, if you disagree at this point, I say, fine, you may disagree. I think I'm far more coherent. Let's agree to disagree, and let me talk to you more about the concept of Islam. And finish off Tawheed, Risala, message, prophethood, Quran, because it's all part of the waking up process. He may disagree with you now, but in a year you may think, wallahi, people change by one word you've said, and you never know what you say how they could be affected, right? So agree to disagree. You've shown them a coherent argument. They may not agree. They may have other arguments. Say, fine, maybe it might make sense, but I think this is stronger. So after God's existence, we believe He is one, and then talk about oneness, which we're going to do now. Before we do that, you have to practice this, okay? So let me just summarize it for you very quickly, and you get into your partners again, and you both become Muslim and non-Muslim, and you get to practice this. Start with initiation, because those who weren't here yesterday, they can get practice. Ready? Everybody listen. Hi Hamza, how you doing? Good, John, good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. Hey dude, how come you're growing a beard now? Yeah, well, I'm getting old, so I thought I'd be wise. Now I'm only kidding. Basically, I'm growing a beard because of my religion. Your religion? So what does your religion say you have to grow a beard? Well, my religion is not all about that, but if you really want to understand why I grow a beard and why I do things because of my religion, you have to understand the concept of Islam. You got a few minutes? Well, I just want a yes or no answer. Well, do you want to connect with me? There is no yes or no answer. What's your name? Yes or no? Doesn't represent you, does it? So, you got time for this concept of Islam? Oh, okay. Well, basically the way we approach the concept of Islam is that we have to use our brain and our heart. We're just not too emotional and we're not just too abstract. We're very common sense, balanced human beings. Would you agree with that? What do you mean by that? Well, would you cross the road blindfolded? Of course not. Well, exactly. So this is what I'm trying to say. So the first part of the concept of Islam is that we believe in God, and actually we've got good reasons to believe in God. For example, the universe began, it must have been created by something uncreated, because it couldn't come from nothing. It couldn't create itself, and it couldn't be created by something else created, because if that goes on forever, you never have the universe in the first place. Does this make sense to you? Yeah, maybe. That's it. Stop there, and then we go to oneness and we continue. Everyone happy to practice this?
Can you just say, when you said that first concept of Islam is to our belief in God, and then how did you go to the universe? What did you link it with?
Okay, say, well, we believe in God, and we have good reasons to believe in God. For example, since the universe began, it couldn't have come from blah, 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 blah. Therefore, there must be an uncreated creator, which we call God. But to understand God properly, we have to understand what we would call His oneness, and that's the next stage. Happy?
This would be for those who didn't believe in God.
Everybody.
What if
everybody?
No. What if he believes in multiple gods? So that how are we going
Even multiple gods.
Even a Muslim.
Even multiple gods. Because he will have to agree there's an uncreated creator. He may say there's 5 uncreated creators. Let's say, look, you understand the concept of an uncreated creator, whether it's 1 or 5, yes. And then in oneness, you filter out everything else. That's the next stage. Make sense? You don't have to use the universe thing, you can use the mobile phone. You know, many sisters like the mobile phone example better, yeah? So, you know, and you know what I like doing, especially in the street, you're like, look, imagine, and what I used to throw my mobile phone on the floor. I used to throw it on the floor and say, that's why it's all got, BlackBerry Bold is in a mess at the moment, yeah? I throw it and I'm like, look, what's that? It's a mobile. How did it get there? Are you going to say that the petrol, the oil from the car came out and somehow formed into the plastic? And the broken glass from the beer bottle in the corner formed into the kind of glass casing of the BlackBerry Bold? And then you have all the numbers and you have your mother's mobile phone in it? You're saying that's just based on chance? Based on sand, oil, and chance? Or was it dropped there and the way it was made was because it was designed? What's more plausible? Well, designed, of course. Well, imagine the entire universe, which is far more complex. That's it. Use a mobile phone example. Or other ones that you learn. Remember, my job in the next 2 days is to give you a structure, not to give you all the arguments. You have to add your own arguments, make this structure your own. Because everyone would express this whole approach in their own way. Make sense? Last question.
Yeah, can you, so after we say common, after we go to we're done with the common sense, if they agree, we say we believe in God, and we have
No, common sense don't get agreement, just make it as a statement.
Okay.
You see, it makes more sense that, we approach conclusions in life using our brain and our hearts. We're not going to cross the road blindfolded. Another point about obviously.
I just don't get the God existence triangle. The one side's agree, one side.
Yeah, so we say we believe in God. We have good reasons to believe in God. For example, blah 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 blah. Do you agree? Does this make sense to you? And then move on. Okay. Yeah.
Some people are so hardcore that they want precision and rigor in the argument.
They want precision and rigor.
Yes. It's like a mathematical background. He wants it, the way you prove things.
No, they don't. You just have to say to them this: I've given you a coherent basic structure of an argument. It's for you to think about at home further, and we could discuss it further. But move on with giving him Tawheed, giving him the whole of Islam. Because you'll be there forever, position and arguments. Because at the end of the day, it's very impractical. You can say, well, give me the position and argument that your mom's your mom.
Use math.
You can't even use math for that. You can't use nothing for that. You don't even have empirical proof for it. You don't have a DNA test, but you really believe she gave birth to you. Where's your evidence? You don't have evidence. You have testimony. You got the testimony of your father, your mother, and the midwife. Khalas.
Still, they will say you're not true. He will say, for example, the Quran.
No, wait. It's nothing to do with rigorous, bro. Something coming from nothing is very simple. You don't need any rigor in it. All of these things are very simple, but yet very truthful. Okay? And you should show him. If you really want more, if you have other contentions and they're very nitty-gritty, it actually shows how powerful your argument is. Because if your argument was weak, he would deal with these in a profound way, but they can't. So throwing other things into the mix actually shows how strong your argument is in the first place. Do you understand?
Still, some people want certainty more than.
These are extremely very people.
Like,
No, he said you're trying to wake up the fitrah. You're not trying to.
No, he does not. Relax, stop being an Arab and get frustrated. Right. Listen. Yeah, they might be rigorous, bro. But I say to them, I don't have time for your rigor. I believe you're very intelligent, and you could apply the structure of my argument I've just given you, and you can think about it further at home. Let me just tell you more about the concept of Islam. Okay, sure.
And then if you ask
Be human. It's a conversation, bro. It's not a debate.
okay,
Because you're pre-framing a debate, and that's the problem. Because when I'm with human beings, I'm never debate mode. I'm like, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, you might be right. But I think I'm coherent, so think about what I said and take it further. But let me talk to you about the oneness of God now, about my back. It's a conversation, bro.
But I know, for some people they want certainty.
Well, for some people, bro, they like taking drugs. For some people, bro, They're like doing silly things.
And I think-
For some people, they think the world is flat.
But-
What are you going to do, bro? You're going to entertain everybody?
I think it's their right to be certain of what they
No, that's not Islamic. That's too much ilm al-kalam. That's too much, that's bid'ah. Wallah, I believe that. That is bid'ah.
Too much falsafa.
That is too much, bro. It's bid'ah, bro. Because at the end of the day, we believe in the fitrah, it's part of your nature. What are you going to do? You're going to start philosophizing? That's why some of the ulama they went that way. Because they said the biggest question was God's existence. Wallahi, find me in the Quran argument for God's existence. Find it for me. Find me. The Quran assumes God exists already. Most of the Quran. Do you see my point? All the arguments in the Quran concerning rububiyyah, meaning the creative power of Allah, they're all as a premise for His worship, not for His existence. Be Quranic. If you're not, bro, you end up in a mess. Trust me, I know from experience. I know from experience. All the verses in the Quran concerning rububiyyah, meaning, you know what that means? The creative power of Allah, that He is the creator. Have you not seen the camel and how we created it? أَفَلَا يَنْظُرُونَ إِلَى الْإِبِلِ كَيْفَ خُلِقَتْ. Have you not seen this, that and the other? That's all as a basis for you to understand Allah is your creator and He should be worshipped. Not that He just exists. Because the Arabs at the time, they already knew that Allah existed. Because it was part of every human nature. Do you see my point, bro? The biggest question is not God's existence. The biggest question is, who should we worship? That's the Quranic paradigm. And we need to follow that. If you don't, you'll be lost. I've seen it, bro. I've seen it with so many brothers who get... I even get accused of that as well, which is the funny thing, yeah? But they're even worse brothers than me. They go so deep into this, they're finished, they're lost. Certainty doesn't mean anything anymore at that point. It's all ambiguous, all skeptical. Trust me, once you reach to academia, bro, you could justify anything. I could justify that my mom's a crocodile. Academically, I'm telling you. But it becomes unnatural. Use foundational arguments that are very profound. Let them apply it. Give them the seed. Give them the seed. On whose earth and whose authority you think that you have to give them certainty, bro? When it's Allah that guides. And whoever Allah guides, no one can misguide. And it's the Allah that misguides, and whoever Allah misguides, no one can guide. So who are you to think they have a right to be certain, I'm going to give it to them, I'm the certain man? No, bro, just relax. Take a chill pill. Just relax, Allah. Just relax. Just give them the seeds. Conversations with human beings are planting seeds, okay? Planting seeds in people.
So you're saying we can never prove to somebody, like logically, that Islam is 100% true? Absolutely.
Yes. Never.
Never.
Yes.
And so why did you?
Because it's true.
Why do you believe it's true?
Because it is. And there are good arguments for it.
Yeah, you can say it's more likely.
Well, it's more
It's
likely.
the most likely. That's why a rational human being would follow it.
Yeah, it's most likely, bro. Trust me, bro. Philosophical rational discussions can't prove anything, really. You could end up agreeing to disagree, or you could end up thinking there is no truth. Trust me. I believe rationally you can prove Islam, right? But on the nitty-gritty level, different paradigms of philosophy, different epistemology, blah, 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 you can get into a big mess. The point is, Islam is very simple from this perspective. Say this, you have fitrah, okay? Here's a human being. Okay? There's a human being. That's his fitrah. You have arguments for Islam. There's A. Okay? You're giving him all these arguments. Okay? These arguments are just to wake up the fitrah. Because fitrah is already a precept. It knows. It's already true that God exists and He deserves to be worshipped. This is our view. So arguments are just to wake up the fitrah. Do you see? And that's why the arguments in the Quran are there to wake up the fitrah. Look at the universe. Look at yourself. Look at design. Look at this. Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I knew it. Yeah, definitely. Okay? It's not there to go into huge nitty-gritty details of what's the difference between atemporal causality and temporal causality. Can you have atemporal causality? I mean, these things are just crazy things, bro. Bro, you're trying to say to me that you could sit up here and you could prove 100% to any academic that Islam is true? Do you know about epistemology? Do you know how to justify each source of knowledge?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yani, but you don't know everything, do you?
No, of course.
So exactly. So the point is, the assumption of your approach is that you should know everything, which is ridiculous assumption. So there are some foundational truths that could be shown foundationally, and this is quite academic anyway. You can get very detailed into this, yeah. But you have to understand, this is mainstream Islam, bro. That fitrah, and we wake it up. The other approach actually sees revelation as something very alien, and you have to work your way to revelation. I don't think that's a healthy approach. It gets you into big trouble. And then you just focus on one question only, which is God's existence. But the biggest question is who you should worship. Study the seerah, it's in our face, study the Quran. The biggest question is who you should worship, not God's existence. And that's why we fell into the Greek trap in history. We start thinking, does God exist? Irrelevant. You already know he exists. As Musa alayhi salam says, is there any doubt? Is there any doubt? It's obvious. It's not a concept, it's a precept. These arguments are there just to wake you up.
Yeah, but the atheist movement is questioning the God existence.
No, bro, the atheist movement is questioning themselves. Don't you understand? The atheist movement is bullcrap. It's bakwas. It's rubbish. It's poo-poo. The atheist movement is just psychology, bro. It's just psychology. Haven't you seen the atheist movement? Rhetorical, aggressive morons, some of these leaders. Listen to what they have to say. Listen to them. Have you read The God Delusion? It's a joke. Even my gran could deal with it. He can't even speak English. It's all psychology, bro. They just want to justify desires. Wallahi, that's why atheist movement is a political movement. Wake up. Atheist movement is not an intellectual one, it's a political one because they rely on emotion and rhetoric. And if you see what they're doing from Pakistan to the whole Muslim world, it's based on secularization, not based on atheism. It's based on secularization because that's how atheism is going to flourish. It's a political movement. Study their leaders and you see that.
Yeah, but that's when we talk about the leaders. But I'm talking about the followers.
They're even worse. Wallahi, atheism is a religion.
Sorry?
Atheism is a religion.
Yeah.
I was in Hyde Park the other day for a documentary in London. I stood up on the thing and said, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters and friends, lend me an attentive ear. I'm going to announce to you a new religion. Everybody came. This religion has its leaders. They have the books and they have the followers and they have their blind followers. And people quote the books, chapter and verse. And they have the gatherings once a year. Do you know what this religion is? What? It's atheism. Everyone's like offended, a lot of atheists there. Look at the leaders or their prophets. Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Dan Dennett. And they have a new saint recently, Christopher Hitchens, because he passed away. And look at their book, God is Not Great, The God Delusion, Letter to Christian Faith, The End of Faith. And sometimes when I deal with atheists, I say, oh, just read Dawkins' book, chapter 5. Nothing, just like a normal religious guy. It's crazy. Like, for example, when I was talking about morality, an atheist, a PhD student stood up and said, oh, well, for you to understand that you have to read Sam Harris's book, The Moral Landscape. And I said, you idiot. What's wrong with you? You become just like a religious man. You don't have an argument. Another guy, Muslim. Pakistani atheists are the worst creatures in my view. Yeah? They deserve kapa, big time. You know, bro, take your slip, bro, and go, dim,
There are no Pakistani atheists.
Oh, there is, bro, trust me. Especially in Lahore. His name is Na Khuda.
What?
His nickname is Na Khuda.
The business you. I saw a video on YouTube.
Oh, Professor Hood Boy, yeah. Hood Boy became a rude boy. But listen. But let me make a point. And What was my point? You put me off track.
There's a
Atheism is a religion.
PhD student.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. There's a Pakistani atheist, seemed like an atheist at Nottingham University. And he said, well, you know, God's conclusion is not a good conclusion because God has to be more complex than the universe itself. And I said to him, bro, you just copied that from Dawkins, be true. Be honest. No, I did it myself. Okay, what do you mean by complex? Just be honest, you took it from the 2nd chapter or the 4th chapter, right? And then he admitted, he's boring someone else's argument. So why do you use it? Because you think it makes sense, because you sound clever. You just quoted verse. Trust me, when you immerse yourself in this field, you know who's borrowing what and who's taking what, yeah? Because I read the atheist books all the time. I said, didn't you? And I embarrassed him. So I'm not going to answer the question unless you know what your question means. How dare you want me to answer your question, and your own question you don't even know what it means? Pagan. Yeah, he's a pagan, which means crazy in Urdu, yeah? Do you see my point? It's a lot of it's psychology, guys. So don't think, there's this intellectual tsunami. It's not. It's an emotional, rhetorical, political tsunami that's going to engulf Islam. It's not intellectual per se. Because you could dissect atheism based on these 4 points. That's it. Everything else is superfluous. But anyway, that's a red herring, wrong topic. Everybody ready to practice this? Let's go. Partner up. Both of you get to do the whole thing. Bismillah, let's go. 7 minutes. Yallah. I would say, especially since you didn't use the argument that I like, use the design type of argument, I would say, well, God never began to exist. So if he never began to exist, then you can't postulate that who created. Because if he didn't begin, then he was always there, right? Or you could say, well, the best explanation doesn't require an explanation. Because if I go on the moon, okay, and I'm an astronaut and I dig away and I find pottery and technology, then the best explanation, there was a civilization there. But if someone says to me, since you don't know their name and where they came from, then you're wrong. No, because the best explanation doesn't require an explanation. And if you always say you need an explanation for the best explanation, it undermines all science and all knowledge, because you'll have nothing. Because if the best explanation always required an explanation, and that explanation required an explanation, and that explanation required an explanation, then you'll never have anything. So those 2 ways of dealing with it, okay? It's very good to Zafar here. Right, brothers. You two. You?
I just came.
You just came? Now go home then. Okay, let's do these two.
I knew it.
You trying to say you have wahi? Come on, let's hear you go. Come on. Yalla, stand up, both of you.
Stand up? No,
Yeah.
stand up, right? We'll give you the mic. Yeah.
Yo, man, you don't need to use the mic. Remember my discussion on tawakkul yesterday? Remember my discussion on tawakkul? Can you raise your voice so you don't have to use another unnecessary means to fulfill the objective? Don't you learn anything, man? Come on, yalla. Loud, nice and loud.
محمود لا مو مرة واحدة.
My name is Ashir. Your name is Mahmoud. Was it prohibited for a man to touch a woman's hand?
Wow, excellent question. And in order to give you the complete answer, you need to go back to the concept of Islam. In order to give you the complete answer, you need to go back to the concept of Islam. First of all, we believe in God. Why? Because I'm nervous, I cannot do this.
You can. Wait, listen to me. Stay there.
Okay.
Wallahi, the Muslim should never say I can't. Let me tell you why. You saying you can't means that you have some kind of revelational knowledge of what's happening in the next 2 minutes. Do you have wahi that you won't be able to do this in the next 2 minutes?
No, I don't have one.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So therefore, who are you listening to at the moment? Are you listening to shaitan that's using your own voice against you? Yes. Let me prove it to you. Muslims believe in Tawheed, right? What do we say sometimes? And listen, sisters. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no true power apart from the power of Allah. This is an empowering worldview, because nothing has intrinsic power apart from the power of Allah. So even you thinking you can't do it has no intrinsic power. Even you, your past experiences thinking that they've made you think that you can't do it has no intrinsic power. Everything happens because of the will of Allah and because of His power. Do you know Allah's will? No. So that means you have an infinite realm of possibility to achieve what you can. So never say you can't, because it assumes you know the will of Allah in the next 2 minutes. You don't. So that it should be empowering. Tawheed is empowering. Trust me. So we're going to do it 100 times until you're confident. Okay. I did this with one sister in Blackburn in England. She was hiding behind a hijab, behind the notes, behind everything, right? I made her do it 6 times because she was so worried. She said, I can't. And then the end, all of a sudden she did it better than I did. And then she dropped the book and she started crying. She was shocked that she had it inside her. She didn't know, because she was listening to shaitan all the time that was disguised as her voice. And I started to cry because it was such an empowering moment. You could tell that a frail sister, you know, she probably goes home and stays in her bedroom all day and writes poetry and doesn't really. She was one of those kind of introverts, right? And yet she could do it. So don't worry, bro.
All right.
You may fail 1,000 times, but you know there is no such thing as failure. It's just a 2,000 step process. Yalla.
Are we doing it again?
Yes.
Let's do it.
Nice and loud.
So, I'm not Muslim, right? Right now. As if,
yes, bro.
As if, so I'm not going to say assalamu alaikum. Hey, how are you? My name is Rashid. You know me. Matt, I have a question. Why is it prohibited for Muslim men to touch women's hand?
Wow, excellent question. To answer it fully, we need to go back to the concept of Islam, what Muslims believe. Okay? So we start with God's existence. Does God exist? Since we live in this universe right now, we know it began. Could it have just come from nothing?
No.
Does it make sense?
No, it doesn't.
Does it make sense? Could it create itself?
How something is not there, create itself to be there.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Could it be created by something created?
Yeah, maybe. Why not?
Maybe, of course. Okay. Take this bottle.
Yes.
Wait, but you have to ask the person behind you for permission.
Yeah, would you please allow him to give me the bottle?
And then that person should ask the person behind him for permission.
Yeah.
And then it goes on forever. Will you ever get permission to take the bottle?
No. Because it's not a sequence.
Yes. So this means that this point cannot be done.
There has to be an end for this.
If it goes on for infinity, then this world wouldn't have been created.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You get the point?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. The last and final option we have in these 4 options is that the universe was created by something uncreated. We already proved that the other 3 options they're not coherent. They don't stand.
Okay, just wait 1 minute, yeah? This is proof of the disaster of the human being. Just 5 minutes ago, bro, you said you couldn't do it.
Takbir.
Wallahi, I think one, learn from this, yeah, because I'm telling you, it's very emotional. Your whole life is like this. The human being is shattered with this negativity. And look what you just done. You did it fantastically, I think.
Thank you.
MashaAllah. So the point is, empower yourself through Tawheed, look what you could achieve. And this was just 5 minutes. That doesn't mean you don't believe. Of course I know you believe. You're one of the most muwahid brothers in the world, yeah? We know that. But get it to really be in a practical way. So you link the heart with the practice. And look what you could do. Allah is this.
Thank you.
So, that's done. Right. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is an uncreated creator. And then this links to oneness, okay? Oneness is very nice and easy, mashallah. It's easy to understand. And all we do, we just follow on from the fact that you say, well, there is a designer for the universe or there's an uncreated creator. And once you say there's a designer for the universe or there's an uncreated creator, then you say, therefore, it must have the following attributes or features, okay? And they are as follows. Number one, must be eternal. Okay? Because if it's uncreated, then it follows it's eternal. If you design the whole universe, it follows it's eternal, because you can't have a designer. If that goes on forever, then you don't have the design in the first place. Yeah? Number two, must be powerful. If you split one atom in this universe, what happens?
Atomic bomb.
Atomic bomb, you have a release of an entire energy. That's one atom. So the one that created the whole universe obviously is going to be powerful. Make sense?
Yep.
Number three, must be knowing. Name your law in the universe. The law of gravity. It's a law, right? So a lawgiver means an intelligence. It implies an intelligence, it implies knowledge. Number four, I just go transcendent. What does this mean? Essentially, what does the Quran say? لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٌ. Simple. Transcendent means, as the words of Ibn Taymiyyah and others, that the creator is distinct and disjoint from creation. If I create the chair, do I become the chair? No, I'm distinct and disjoint from creation. Simple. Distinct and
Disjoint.
distinct and disjoint.
It's not creation. You're making a chair, you didn't create a chair. It's not creation. You can tell your religion. Oh, creation, not create.
So if I create the chair, let me just write a chair for you. Example.
Looks like this one.
Okay? Number five, must have a will. In Islamic thought, this is called IERA. Must have a will. Means it chooses. Okay, why? It's very simple. If it's eternal and it brought the universe into existence,
So it decided something.
it must have decided. That's the only, it's so simple. It's eternal. It brought into existence the universe that began. Therefore, it must have chose the universe to come into existence. Number six, must be one. The easiest way of doing this is saying that it must have one will, which makes sense. There is one creator. Why? And this argument you can find in Aqidah Tahawiyya, in the explanation of Ibn Abi al-Izz. And it's a very interesting explanation. He basically gives the following analogy. Say you have this stone. Okay? And there are two gods, meaning two wills. One wants to move the stone to the right, the other to the left. Okay? What happens? They both cancel each other out. So that's not a possibility. There can't be two conflicting wills. Okay?
Why don't you have two people?
Wait, I'm getting there. Sabr. One wants to move one to the left and the other to the left. It means they have one will. If every moment, at every time, they always agree all the time. It's one will. Okay? What if one wants to move it to the right and one wants to move it to the left and the one on the left wins? It means there's one will because it overpowers the other one. In every scenario, you always have one will. It's called the argument from exclusion, and it's based on mainstream aqidah, on aqidah tahawiyah, the explanation of Ibn Abi al-Izz. So whatever happens, you're always going to have one will. Does that make sense? You want me to say that again?
Yes.
Okay. Following scenarios. I'm going to write this down for you actually. Scenario number one. So both want to move left and right. Sorry, bad English. Start that again. Right. So now number one. One wants to move it to the right, the other wants to move it to the left. They both agree. Okay? So they both cancel each other out. Okay? So they cancel each other out. So that means there's no will. That's an impossibility. Because we know there must be a will. Then you have both moving to the right. Or both always agreeing. So always agree. That means you have one will. Because only one will is being manifested. Then you have the scenario where one wants to move to the left, the other to the right, but the one on the left wins. Again, one will, as it cancels the other. These are the possibilities. And when you exclude every single possibility, you always have one will. Yes?
Sorry, the engineering team has to
Of
kick
course.
in. The scenario here is like he's saying that okay, there is only two gods. What if it was a group of gods?
If it doesn't even work with two, how's it going to work with three?
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's like if it was like two would like to take the left, one to take the right.
Democracy.
Yeah.
Democracy wins, that means one of them is not a god.
Or even if you have 150,000 want to take left, 252 million want to take right.
Yeah.
Same thing.
There's only one of them is a god.
There's going to be one way of doing something. You can't be left and right at the same time.
And if you're God, then
There you
can't
go.
right and you want left.
The point is, you could use an example with 5, 10, 15, 100. You use 2 just to make it simple. So I would reply the way Abdullah replied. If you can't do it with 2, you can't do it with 100. You're always going to have one will.
And if there is two opposing opinions, that means that there's something wrong and there's something right, and God doesn't make mistakes, right?
What do you mean two opposing opinions?
That means that one of them sees that.
Apply to the scenario. Don't make new scenario
Yeah, yeah.
opinions.
Okay,
It's not
okay.
a court of law. It's a stone.
The stone, he wants it to be to the right, because this is the right way to do it.
Forget right way. You're wrong. Stop being an Arab, yeah? Everything has to be your way. Listen.
Okay.
Yani either goes left or right. Who cares if it's one is the right way and one is the wrong way, okay? Ignore it. The point we're going to show is this. Listen to the analogy. It either could move left or right. It can't be left and right at the same time. So, if they both manifest their will, then it means they cancel out everything. It doesn't move at all. But that would mean there's no will, but we've shown there's a will. So that doesn't apply. There could be the other scenario where they all agree. If they always agree, then there's only one will. The other scenario would be that one overpowers the other, which means there's only one will. Khalas. Yes, bro.
But some religions have this, that one God is supreme. I think the Arabs also had like Allah is supreme. His will is supreme, but the other gods have less power. Now, of course, that is shirk.
Yes.
So how does that tie into oneness?
No, well, the only type of oneness we're talking about here is the oneness in terms of wahid.
You mean in terms of will? In terms of will, not in terms of like... You're talking in terms of will, right? You're not talking in terms of...
Yeah, we're not talking about other aspects of oneness. The other aspects of oneness are including this, transcendent. Because if someone says Jesus, well, he shares the same will with the Father and the Holy Spirit. We say, yeah, well, so? The point is, Jesus doesn't make sense because he's supposed to be God and he came into the universe. But God is supposed to be? Read that out. Which is distinct and disjoint from that. But Jesus is in the universe and he's supposed to be God. Make sense? It's part of it. So all of this approaches most of the oneness. Okay? Yeah.
Does Jesus said in the Bible,
Forget that. You don't want to get into the Bible. The whole point is you don't have to read other people's books. This is a very unique approach. It applies to everybody. Yeah?
So I do want to understand this because the majority of people talk to Christians. So he will say, we will talk about oneness, and this happened, and they were like, yeah, we agree, it's one God. Don't you know about Christianity? It's one God.
That's fine, relax. So what you do when it's a Christian, stick to the plan. They talk about transcendence. He'll agree with this. If he doesn't, they agree to disagree. You get the Christian when you talk about Quran revelation. We'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Once you do revelation, khalas, it's over. Because their beliefs are based on something. If you could show your beliefs are based on something better and you could prove, they'll have to adopt it. Khalas. You don't have to go into the Bible. You don't have to go into all this mess. It's a very simple approach. Right? Yeah.
Like, so let's say me and my friend want to create a chair. We are creators.
No, I'll tell you why. Because outside of the universe, you're assuming another entity without any evidence.
But
in your example, there are two, right? What we're saying is, outside of the universe, we're assuming there's only one creator, yeah?
Okay.
Yeah. Say you assume there's two. The point is, to assume multiplicity requires evidence. You can't assume multiplicity. How?
So how can you assume
one then?
One, because you got the universe in existence. That's the whole point. There has to be something.
So this is like a what if question again.
So it's an at least one.
At least one, yes.
So this is
and minimum one. But if you add two, then the question then follows, well, where's your evidence? There's another one.
The knock on the door, right? You know?
You could do the knock on the door example, but the easiest way is to do an Occam's razor approach, which is don't multiply entities beyond necessity. Because fine, we've proved there's one will, okay? So there's one will. It makes sense, therefore there's one God. To say there are two gods and one will, then what are you really doing?
what if?
It's like a what if question. You're still describing one entity. Because if there are two gods and one will, where's the evidence for two separate gods? Do you see my point?
This one's more like from where I come from, India, is like they will say, okay, there's the skies. This God is handling the sky. This God is. I'm just giving an example. I'm not sure what the basis is. This God is handling the sky. This God is handling the earth. And the main God has basically let them. Yes, He has given them the delegation. He has given them power to handle these different aspects.
Yeah, but the main God created the universe, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all we're showing. That there's one God that created the whole universe.
It seems like Malak al-Jiman and Malak
The other stuff that we'll address, you have to go straight to Quran.
Okay.
Because the Quran is from God. Then if it says there are no intermediaries, there's no intermediaries, right? Rationally, all you can prove is there's one will. Don't forget, this process makes sense when you do the whole thing. And you see it all add together like a jigsaw puzzle. Every other concept enhances itself. Make sense? Any questions? Any further questions? There's no questions for the sisters. Does that mean you're lost? Does that mean what's going on? Or does that mean you're super geniuses? Which one is it?
Yeah, maybe not the last.
Okay, so you need your questions are clarified. Okay, good. Yes?
How do you relate this to whatever we just talked about? Like, how do we connect?
Okay, excellent. So when we say we have an uncreated creator, we say if there's an uncreated creator, therefore, when we keep on using our brain and common sense, he must be eternal because he wasn't created. He must be powerful, and you start justifying it. And then if you use a design argument, you say, well, if there's a designer, he must be an undesigned designer, because if there's a designer for the designer, and there's a designer for that designer, and that goes on forever, you'll never have design in the first place. So if there's an undesigned designer, then he must be eternal because he's undesigned. He's always there. He must be powerful because he designed all this power in the universe. He must be knowing because he designed laws in the universe. He must be intelligent. He must be different and distinct and destroyed. Because if I design a car, I don't become the designer of the car. Right? So it's the same thing. Make sense?
Some people take offense that you use a he.
A he.
Yeah.
You just say to him in Arabic, it's not he, it means it, basically. Really. Isn't it?
Everything has to be male or female.
Because Allah is genderless. You know that? The word is genderless. So when we say huwa, it could mean he, or it could mean it.
Okay.
Yeah. But to say it is a bit more rude in English. So if you want to be very technical, you say the thing that is genderless. Because Allah is genderless.
The one.
The one.
The one, yeah. The one, mashallah, the one who is genderless. Yes.
So just the final question sort of clarified the analogy that you've used to explain the point of will.
Yeah.
I mean, the first case seems to make sense because we've proved that that case couldn't happen because if it doesn't move, that means there's no will, right? So the second case, we say that it could only really be one will because it's moving in one direction.
Yes.
But however, there's sort of a problem with the logic looking at it Islamically for the third case because essentially you're saying one wants to move to the left, one wants to move to the right, and then one wins. So you're leaving the case open for there being two wills, but one wins. So essentially you're sort of saying there are two godly wills.
No, because it's all hypotheticals, isn't it? So you're saying if you postulate two creators, but yet we have the universe into play, like we've moved the stone in one direction, then
you're saying one prevails.
If there was another will, then it can't be another will because this was the one that's overpowered.
Well, how you explained it was that one prevailed over the other, which implies the existence of another will, a godly will in this case.
Yeah, but you know, that's fine. Even if there is another will, then which one deserves to be worshipped? The lesser will or the greater will?
But like we said, there is nothing like unto him, right? So
yeah, but maybe there's another being like angels, bro, outside of the universe. Maybe there's jinns.
The will of angels never conflicts with that as well.
That's the whole point. That's why we're saying God would overpower everyone's will, including the will of a jinn that can exist outside of the universe.
But angels would have been left and God would have been left. There wouldn't have been two right.
No, you're missing the point. We're not saying there was Allah, then after there was the whole universe. Maybe we're saying this particular universe. There could be other universes after this universe. You don't know. The point I'm trying to say is, we believe there's one, aslan, naturally. If someone postulates more than one, you say, fine, well, look at the scenarios you say, based upon your hypothesis. It doesn't make sense because we have always one will. That's the point we're trying to show. Because remember, especially when it's an atheist or even an agnostic, if they start postulating things without evidence, say, well, you're postulating something with no evidence. Just to claim there may be a million uncreated eternal beings, say, well, where's your evidence? Well, maybe there is. Well, I say, well, I have more good reasons to believe there's only one God because there's one will. And usually you attribute one will to one person. Khalas. It's what's more reasonable. Make sense? Practice this.
Should we use the stone example?
You could use a stone example, you could use stitching cloth, you could use baking a cake, you could use any example to this. Building a chair, punching a bag, does it go to the left or to the right? Yeah? Yes, brother.
If someone asks me, like, why do I need to follow
a religion, or why should I believe in God? How can we apply this whole exercise?
Yeah, we'll do that at the end of tomorrow. Okay? Those contentions will be at the end of tomorrow. But today was the most complex day. Tomorrow's going to be great. Revelation, 7 arguments, prophethood is the best. Boom, and you finished. Ready to practice?
Inshallah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yalla, 7 minutes. Let's do it. Then we have a last minute, 10-minute Q&A. And then, khalas. Yalla, let's go. Bismillah. By the way, ikhwan and akhawat, don't be overpowered. Sometimes you can ignore all of this. Isn't that right, Medina? Sometimes you can ignore all of this and ignore all of this. Sometimes you go straight to Quran. When it comes to my dawah, sometimes I go straight to Quran. Khalas. The golden rule, always go to Quran. But I'm giving you everything so you have all the tools. You have an AK-47, you have a helicopter gun, you have a grenade, you have an intercontinental ballistic missile.
This is not going on YouTube.
You have sniper, you have everything. You have everything, okay?
Got it.
So you use each weapon for each scenario. Yes, brother.
So if I have an idiot like Richard Dawkins, for example, okay? And
A Christian Dawkins.
no, an idiot.
Oh, an idiot.
Yeah. Can I use emotional arguments? I mean emotional, like to explain some of the stories of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah, but
which touches the heart. I mean.
you have to do that. You have to do that. And that's when we're going to go tomorrow on Quran and prophethood. You have rational arguments, but you have emotional ones as well. Remember, at the end, I'm going to discuss with you guys that you have to bring the emotional with the rational together as the Quran does. Don't just be abstract intellectual robot. Yeah? Okay? Don't do that. You have to add the spirituality, the concept of worship. This is very important. We're going to discuss that tomorrow. That's why tomorrow is the best day.
Even if it is Richard Dawkins.
Of course, Richard Dawkins has a heart as well, bro.
Barely.
He doesn't. He doesn't cry when his children cry. Of course, he's a human being. But add the rationality with the emotionality. And if he's not emotional, make him emotional. Because maybe that's his problem. Maybe his heart is not open. Remember, give people what they need, not what they want. Any other question?
I think he's come down one level on atheism, right?
He has, yeah.
He's
a 6.9.
6.9, yeah.
Is it okay to pray for his hidayah?
Of course, the Prophet prayed for mushriks all the time. Umar was a mushrik, so he prayed for him.
What does 6.9 atheist mean?
Yeah. Like he's not a 7 atheist, top mark, he's a 6.9. I think it's to do with the Richter scale on earthquakes. 7 is the highest.
There's levels. 1 is a God, believer in God, and 7 is...
No, it's not 7, is it? The highest.
7?
So what's... So why do you say 7?
9?
It's the pH scale.
pH is 14 though, no?
Yeah, but you know, half of that is 7. Half of
So I need to 7.
Yallah. So, anything else, brothers and sisters? So tomorrow, please all be here tomorrow. It's the best session. Quran, prophethood, bit of emotionality, and the whole picture's going to come together, and you'll be like, wow, I can talk to anybody about Islam. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Yeah? Takbir! Allahu Akbar! May Allah bless you. And if you take the other lesson from our brother here, when he said he didn't, and then after he realized he could. Remember, Tawheed should empower you, inshallah. May Allah bless you guys.